I never would have thought that 1 year after my engagement was broken, I would actually be sitting on the dragon throne, gnawing on a pork shank, while the cousin who stole my fiancé is kneeling outside the hall, staring at me in utter disbelief. 1 year ago, Hua Zisheng came to our house with the betrothal token to break the engagement. That day, I was gnawing on a pork shank, one that had been stewed for a full 6 hours. It was tender, chewy, and bursting with savory aroma, but I had only taken a few bites before the nanny hurriedly dragged me away.
My lady, Heir Huo has come to break the engagement. How can you still be eating?
I walked into the main hall. Hua Zisheng held his head high, acting self-righteous.
Jiang Chixue has grown so fat, she makes people sick just looking at her. No man would ever marry her.
My father clutched his chest, his face red with anger, and my mother looked as though she was about to faint. Yet Hua Zisheng continued to press on.
Your Jiang family's betrothal to my marquis household was always marrying above your station anyway. Transfer the marriage to Ruyan. She is the one who deserves to marry into the marquis household as my primary wife.
My cousin, Li Ruyan, was hiding behind a pillar. She stared with tearful eyes, looking completely innocent. When she was 5 years old, my parents, fearing I would be lonely, specifically brought her in to be my playmate. When I was young, my feet often ached from practicing dance. She would advise me,
"Cousin, life is hard for women. We should follow our hearts and be free. If you don't like practicing dance, then don't."
I was young and believed her words. From then on, I never practiced dance for a single day, and with her encouragement, I started eating large pork shanks 3 times a day. Meanwhile, she never slacked off. On the day of her coming-of-age ceremony, she astounded the capital with her dance. Standing beside her, I was mocked by everyone as the fat girl.
Brother Huo, it is all Ruyan's fault. Ruyan is willing to let sister have Brother Huo.
Ruyan, you are just too kind-hearted. That is why you get bullied by her. The only one this heir wants to marry is you. If they do not agree,
I agree to call off the engagement. I agree. We will call off this marriage. I must trouble the heir of the marquis to return the betrothal token.
Jiang Chixue, do you really agree? Aside from this heir, there is no one else in the entire capital who would ever be willing to marry you.
Once the token is returned, there will be no further relation between us. Whether the heir wishes to marry my cousin or someone else at that time has nothing to do with the earl's household.
Here, take it. A woman of your caliber can only go to a temple to become a nun. Ruyan is the only one this heir loves.
Brother Huo, please give cousin one more chance. Ruyan is willing to be a concubine.
What nonsense are you talking? This heir's formal wife must be you. If she truly cannot get married, this heir is willing, for your sake, to give her a chance to be a concubine.
I did not give them so much as a glance. I calmly picked up the jade pendant from the ground. As my fingertips touched the cold jade, my heart remained completely untroubled. There is no need. My parents will naturally take care of Chixue's marriage. There is no need for the heir to concern himself.
Heh, do you think you are Ruyan? Who in the entire capital does not know that you are the famous fat girl? Which man would ever want you? To be able to enter the marquise's household as a concubine is only thanks to Ruyan's kind heart.
I ignored them completely, turning to comfort my furious parents. Seeing that I paid him no attention, Hua Zisheng left with Liu Ruyan. However, a few days later, when I returned home from an outing, I saw a group of people who had opened my storehouse without permission. They were carrying things outside. The storeroom was filled with the dowry my parents had prepared for me. Every single item was a rare treasure. My favorite peach blossom glazed vase had been carelessly thrown onto the ground, shattered into pieces. The shards reflected a blinding light under the sun. I was burning with rage. Who do you think you are? How dare you act so presumptuously in the count's manor?
Cousin, please don't be angry. Brother Huo said that since you can't get married anyway, he ordered people to move all of your dowry to me. Brother Huo said he would take this dowry and give it to me as compensation. In return, he will allow you to enter the manor as a concubine on the day of my wedding.
What an ungrateful wretch. For so many years, she ate and lived at the count's manor, and now she was even scheming for my dowry. However, before I could finish my thoughts, Hua Zisheng rushed in from outside the door. He shoved me forcefully to the ground. My palms scraped against the cold floor tiles, burning with pain.
Jiang Chixue, you malicious woman, I am moving your dowry. Is it not because your parents are biased, and the dowry they prepared for Ruyan is nothing but shabby items? I was merely taking back what she deserves on her behalf.
I sneered. and slowly stood up. Since you look down on her shabby dowry, then do not take it at all. Now, return every single piece of the dowry that you moved from my courtyard. Otherwise, I will report this to the prefect of the capital. Liu Ruyan looked as if she were about to burst into tears.
Cousin, after more than 10 years of sisterly affection, I merely asked cousin for a few small things. Yet cousin has gone this far.
Liu Ruyan, do not push this too far. Hua Zisheng gritted his teeth.
Jiang Chixue, I never expected you to be so petty. You no longer need to marry into the Marquise's household. Even as a concubine, this heir apparent would not want you.
With that, he put his arm around Liu Ruyan and walked away, leaving only me, looking down in distress, picking up the broken pieces of the vase from the floor. However, I did not cry. I just quietly packed my bags. Because I had known for a long time that there was a better place in this world waiting for me. After my coming-of-age ceremony, Hua Zisheng clung to Liu Ruyan every day, even writing poems to mock my figure. In order not to make my parents sad, I could only hide outside the manor and cry. That was when Lian appeared. He listened to my tearful complaints, but did not comfort me. Instead, he turned around and went to a restaurant, buying a pork shank back for me. As the piping hot pork shank was handed to me, the aroma of the meat wafted straight into my nose. After that, every time I was sad, I would go under that tree, and Lian would buy me a pork shank every single time. On the day I learned Hua Zisheng was going to marry Liu Ruyan, I cried particularly bitterly. My tears mixed with the savory sauce, making it taste both salty and bitter. As Lian helped me carve the pork shank, he asked me,
"Do you want to go to a place where no one dares to make fun of you, and you can eat whatever you want?
"Is there really such a place?" Lian nodded, his eyes shining with light.
Be my consort, and I promise you can eat as much as you want for the rest of your life."
I agreed. Not long after Liu Ruyan married Hua Zisheng, I also entered the palace. After entering the palace, indeed, no one dared to make fun of me anymore. Whatever I wanted to eat, Lian would let me have it. I also asked him, "Don't you find me too plump?" Lian smiled and pinched my cheek.
I was already frail in health. If I married a wife who is as thin as a bamboo pole, wouldn't we look like a pair of chopsticks standing together? Besides, what do they know? You are just slightly plump. My Empress mother said, "This is a sign of good fortune."
So when Liu Ruyan saw me at the imperial banquet, she froze in place as if struck by lightning. Her mother-in-law, the Duchess, smacked her right on the forehead.
What are you staring at? That is her noble consort. Kneel down already.
Liu Ruyan's legs were like iron pillars, stuck to the ground, unable to bend no matter what.
How could she be the noble consort? Didn't she flee to the countryside?
Hua Zisheng, sitting on the men's side, also noticed Liu Ruyan's strange behavior. Following her gaze, he looked over and froze as well.
Jiang Chixue, how did you get up there? How dare you? You actually have the audacity to offend His Majesty.
I had a helpless look on my face. Before I could say anything, the man beside me darkened his face and barked sternly.
How insolent, heir of Yongan and heir's consort, refusing to kneel before us and our noble consort. Do you seek death?
Liu Ruyan and Hua Zisheng's knees buckled under the scolding, and they finally knelt before me to pay their respects, albeit reluctantly. I gave them a casual glance and went back to gnawing on my pork shoulder. Halfway through the banquet, I invited the ladies to the plum garden to admire the blossoms. In the brief moment I went to relieve myself, I discovered that Liu Ruyan had somehow knelt before Lian. She was kneeling in the snow, her voice gentle yet filled with resolve. Snowflakes fell upon her shoulders, making her look all the more pitiful and delicate.
Forgive me, your majesty. This humble subject's wife cannot bear to see you deceived. Today I risk my life to advise you. This Jiang Chixue once harbored feelings for my husband. My husband discovered her lack of virtue, and she constantly bullied me. Later, she was even desperate enough to become my husband's concubine, though I do not know by what means she entered the palace. But how could a person like her be fit to accompany your majesty?
She held her back straight and upright, looking like a dew-kissed lotus rising from the water. Several of Lian's guards could not help but cast pitying glances at her. Seeing this, a smug smile flashed across the corner of her lips, though her voice became increasingly choked with sobs.
Years ago, when I was staying at the count's manor, Jiang Chixue and her parents often treated me with great harshness. I never had enough to eat. Later, when it was time for me to marry, they even withheld my dowry to add to their own daughter's dowry.
As she spoke, her tears began to fall.
I did not wish to speak of these things. But for some reason, upon seeing your majesty, I suddenly found myself unable to contain my emotions.
Come sit beside us.
A look of joy flashed across Li Ruyan's face, and she instantly lifted her pitiful, tear-streaked face, looking coy and bashful.
Thank you, Your Majesty. But would this not be inappropriate? After all, I am.
Midway through her sentence, I stepped out from behind her and sat right down next to Lian. Lian looked down, carefully helping me, brushing the snow off my cloak. What were you doing standing outside the pavilion?
Out there for so long without even carrying a hand warmer. If you catch a cold, it will only make us worry.
Only then did Lu Ruyan realize that Lian's words had been directed at me. Her face instantly flushed, turning red and white by turns. Lian held my hands to warm them for a long while, before finally remembering she was still kneeling below.
What did you just say? In the presence of our noble consort. Say it once more.
Lu Ruyan knelt on the ground, biting her lip, unable to utter a single word. I let out a soft laugh. Why has the heir's wife fallen silent? Do you have a grievance against this consort? You claim my parents mistreated you and did not let you eat your fill. Yet, this consort recalls the jewelry and jade hairpins they gave you. Which of them wasn't worth thousands of taels? It was clearly you who feared gaining weight, eating nothing but boiled vegetables at every meal. Yet in the end, you blamed it on my parents. She bit her lip, her eyes filled with hatred.
So what if they did? They gave me jewelry, merely so I would wear it out to keep up appearances, just to make others praise how good they were. It was utterly hypocritical.
I let out a cold laugh, turning to ask Lian beside me. Your Majesty, with over a decade of upbringing, they can be considered half a parent to the heir's wife. When children slander their parents, how should they be punished? They shall be punished according to the law, in deference to her status as the heir's wife.
She shall be disciplined with flogging according to regulations, and the Marquise's manor shall be docked of its stipend, though exile is spared.
Liu Ruyan could no longer remain kneeling steadily.
Your Majesty, this subject's wife has been wronged. You cannot listen only to the words of that beloved consort.
If we do not believe our beloved noble consort, should we believe you instead? Drag her away.
Several imperial guards grabbed Liu Ruyan by her arms and dragged her outside. Halfway through, Huo Zixing suddenly emerged from nowhere. He puffed out his chest, blocking Liu Ruyan's path.
Your Majesty, Ruyan has always been pure of heart. What she said is all true. That Jiang Chixue is full of lies, so how can her words be trusted?
I let out a laugh. Huo Zixing, that my parents ill-treated her. Did you see it with your own eyes? To be so absolutely certain, could it be that you were peeking outside your cousin's door every day? Huo Zixing stiffened his neck.
So what if I didn't see it with my own eyes? Ruyan has long confided in me. On the contrary, it is you who harbor resentment, misunderstanding Ruyan, and groundlessly speculating and slandering her.
I stood up. I shook my head gently. Over the years, the Earl's residence has kept account books for all expenses. Whether Liu Ruyan was mistreated can be seen at a glance. I will have a copy of this account book made and show it to everyone, so that everyone can judge for themselves. Liu Ruyan did not expect me to mention the account books, and cold sweat instantly broke out on her forehead. She grabbed Huo Zixing's sleeve and said,
Brother Huo, forget it. Let's not argue with my cousin anymore. Cousin, all of this is in the past. I forgive you all.
I sneered. This matter is not up to you. After copying it, I will have someone calculate all the money the heir's wife spent in the Earl's residence over the years. Since the heir's wife does not acknowledge the kindness of the Earl's residence in raising her all these years, then please, heir's wife, repay the full amount with interest when the time comes. Huo Zixing snorted coldly. Show us then. As soon as the words left his mouth, someone immediately brought over the account books. The account books were piled in a thick stack, filled with dense, detailed entries upon opening, recording every single expense. Liu Ruyan's entire face turned pale. Huo Zixing also looked at the account books in disbelief.
How can this be? This account book is absolutely fake.
I glanced at him indifferently. The heir's wife moved the capital with her dance. Did she teach herself? The tutor the Earl's residence hired for her back then was the best instructor in the capital. The monthly tuition was nearly 500 taels of silver, while I only ate a few simple dishes per meal, costing only a few dozen taels a month. Surely the heir and his wife do not intend to default on the debt. Huo Zixing's face turned green with anger. He had no choice but to grit his teeth and order his men to bring the banknotes, throwing them down in front of me.
We are even now. Can I leave?
The emperor, who had been silent, suddenly let out a cold laugh.
No, remember. The heir's wife was also sentenced to punishment. However, it is not completely non-negotiable. Herr Huo, since you dote on your wife so much, then this punishment shall be taken by you on her behalf.
Huo Jingxing widened his eyes, about to refuse, but Li Ruyan hurriedly threw herself onto him, holding him tightly.
Brother Huo, I knew you would help me. Brother Huo, Ruyan loves you.
And so, Huo Jingxing was dragged away. the sound of the wooden staff striking him according to the rules, one after another, along with Hua Jingsing's cries of pain, echoed throughout the entire courtyard. By the time the Marchioness arrived, the punishment had already ended. She held the punished Hua Jingsing, practically reduced to tears. She did not dare to vent her anger at the emperor, nor did she dare to question me, so she could only direct all her rage onto Li Ruyan. After returning home, she forced Li Ruyan to kneel in the ancestral hall every day. When I heard this gossip about the Marquise's manor, I was eating pastries in the palace. The emperor sat beside me, pouring tea for me with a beaming smile. But I never expected that a few days later, Hua Jingsing would enter the palace again after his punishment. It was the Empress Dowager's birthday, and all the officials entered the palace to offer their congratulations. Whether the emperor was considering Hua Jingsing's inconvenience, or simply did not want to see him, he had specially decreed that he did not need to enter the palace. Yet, to my surprise, he insisted on coming to the palace anyway, and stopped me with red, tearful eyes.
Chixue, can we talk?
I really did not know what I could possibly have to talk about with him. I refused him flatly, no. But he grabbed my sleeve, holding on so tightly that I could not break free.
Chixue, I know you still have feelings for me. That venomous woman, Lu Ruyan, ever since I was punished, has been behaving inappropriately with people outside the manor. Only now do I know that back then, besides me, she was also involved with several other men. She doesn't love me at all. She only chose me on purpose because I was your fiancé. She just wanted to use me to hurt you. She only wanted to use my hands to target you. Chixue, I regret it.
He spoke through gritted teeth, his face full of resentment.
You hurriedly entered the palace to marry the emperor, surely to catch my attention and make me jealous. I understand your feelings now. Let's elope. We'll go to a place where no one knows us. I've even packed our bags.
I was utterly dumbfounded. Everything I ate and wore in the palace was of the finest quality. Why on earth would I leave with him? Besides, I had already fallen in love with the emperor. My past feelings for him were only because of our status as betrothed. If my fiancé had been someone else instead of him, I would have treated that person just as well. I hastily rejected him and hurried away with my maid. But halfway through the banquet, my mother's maid suddenly came looking for me.
My lady, madam has sprained her ankle. Please go and see her quickly.
I rushed over, only to find in the room Hua Jingsing, whom I had just rejected. His eyes were bloodshot, looking as if he had gone mad.
Chixue, you should be mine. If you want to be mad by yourself. I don't like you at all. That is impossible. It doesn't matter. Even if you don't like me, it doesn't matter. After today, you will have no choice but to leave with me.
Only then did I notice a strange fragrance drifting in the air, sickly sweet and deeply unsettling. I quickly covered my nose and mouth, but it was already too late. My head spun, and my limbs went weak. Before fainting, I saw Hua Jingsing's crazed smile. At the banquet, cups and glasses clinked in celebration. Then, someone suddenly noticed that the Noble Consort was missing. As the palace servants scrambled to search for her, Li Ruyan suddenly stood up, her eyes rimmed with red.
Your servant just saw the Noble Consort and your servant's husband heading toward that palace hall one after the other. They must be alone in the room right now. It is all because this subject failed to keep an eye on them.
The crowd erupted into an uproar. The Empress Dowager gave Li Ruyan a cold look.
Lead the way.
While weeping, Li Ruyan discreetly gathered all the noble ladies to follow her. When they arrived at the door, deliberate noises came from inside, inviting misunderstanding.
Cousin is truly foolish. His Majesty and the Empress Dowager treat her so well, yet she would do such a thing. I hope that when the Empress Dowager goes in, she will show her some mercy and spare her life. This subject is willing to divorce the heir, to let my cousin and my husband be together.
The noble ladies whispered among themselves.
The heir's wife is truly kind. Jiang Chixue is alone with the heir, yet she is still pleading for them. At the Empress Dowager's birthday feast, committing such an act, even severe punishment would not be too much.
A faint smirk played on Li Ruyan's lips. Looking at the vermilion door before her, she pushed it open with force. She was the first to rush to the bed, dragging the woman off it. Everyone's eyes focused on them. Li Ruyan covered her eyes and wept continuously.
Cousin, how could you do such a thing? Are you not ashamed before the Emperor and the Empress Dowager? If you had said earlier that you liked the heir, since we are sisters, I would have gladly let you have him. But how could you do this with him behind the Emperor's back, and at the Empress Dowager's birthday feast, no less?
However, after crying for a long time, she realized that no one was playing along with her. Everyone was looking at her with a bizarre gaze. She looked down, only to find that the woman on the floor was not me. but the one known for her flamboyant behavior and love of excitement in the capital. The Empress Dowager's niece, Commandery Princess Saikang. She stood up with a cold sneer.
So you are the one who harmed this commandery princess.
Liu Ruyan's face was filled with terror.
How could it be you? No, this is all a misunderstanding. It is all a misunderstanding. Where is Jiang Chixue? Where is she hiding?
Before she could finish speaking, Princess Saikang slapped her across the face.
Who are you to call my imperial sister-in-law by her name? Don't tell me you are still trying to harm my sister-in-law.
I'm not. It was all Jiang Chixue. She set me up on purpose. She must be with Huo Jingsing, hiding in one of the rooms.
I stepped out from behind the crowd of titled ladies who were watching the drama. The emperor was following right behind me. Were you calling for me? Then you are going to be disappointed. Liu Ruyan's face turned pale in an instant.
How is this possible?
How dare you not curtsy upon seeing my imperial sister-in-law? Kneel down before this princess.
With a thud, Liu Ruyan fell to her knees. She looked up at me in a daze. Her eyes filled with nothing but resentment and fear. The Empress Dowager shook her head.
Someone of this caliber dares to plot against our daughter-in-law. Is your Young and Marquis manner getting a bit too bold?
The Madam of Young and Marquis Manor hurriedly knelt down to beg for mercy.
It is all due to this subject's lack of discipline. Once we return, this subject will definitely discipline her thoroughly.
Our beloved consort has been repeatedly insulted and plotted against by your son and daughter-in-law. Do you think a few words of discipline can make up for it? We see that the Young and Marquis Manor has become far too arrogant. Starting today, demote the Marquis of Yong'an to the Earl of Yong'an. Reflect on your actions properly.
The madam's legs went weak, and she instantly collapsed to the floor. Huo Jingsing, who was on the bed, also woke up. Stumbling out of bed, he muttered, "Swear." The madam hurriedly covered his mouth. Simone, knock this rebellious son unconscious and take him back. The others gradually dispersed. Only Liu Ruyan remained kneeling on the ground. I walked over, lifted her chin, and forced her to look at me. I didn't treat you poorly, did I? Ever since you entered the manor, I have always treated you as my best sister. I have never been able to understand why you hate me so much, that you absolutely insisted on putting me to death. Liu Ruyan gritted her teeth, her eyes filled with pure hatred.
Best sister?
To you, I was nothing more than a plaything. With just a single word from you, you separated me from my parents, my own flesh and blood. If it weren't for you, I would have certainly grown up by my parents' side. I would have been their favorite daughter, rather than just a dependent cousin living in an earl's manor. So that was why. I let out a speechless smile, my heart filled with mixed emotions. I didn't tell her that the reason I had asked my parents back then to let her be my playmate was because I overheard her parents' conversation. They said if she wasn't chosen, they would send her away, to avoid having her compete with her brother Yaozu for food at home. I pitied her. So I begged my parents to bring her back to our manor, letting her dress, eat, live, and travel exactly as I did. Yet, I never would have imagined that she would actually hate me because of this. After a short while, she was dragged back by the Marquise's manor. The Marquise's wife originally wanted to punish her severely, to put this matter to rest, but she didn't expect that Commandery Princess Saiken, ever since that day, had remained fixated on Huo Jingyang. She wanted Huo Jingyang to enter her manor to serve her, and she didn't want the matter regarding Liu Ruyan to affect her own reputation. Understanding her hint, the Marquise's wife immediately forced Liu Ruyan and Huo Jinghang to divorce, and then sent Liu Ruyan away. The people who came to receive her were none other than her biological parents, whom she had missed for over a decade. Liu Ruyan did not expect the Marquise's wife to be so kind, and rushed toward them in pleasant surprise, but she failed to notice the way they looked her up and down, as if sizing up merchandise. That very night, she was sent by her parents to do hard labor to pay off their debts, where she suffered endless abuse, unwilling to endure the humiliation. Liu Ruyan escaped several times, only to be caught and brought back every single time. Ultimately, due to her numerous misdeeds, she was sentenced by the court to penal servitude, paying the price for her schemes for the rest of her life. As for Huo Jingyang, after the Marquise's household was demoted to a count's household because of him, everyone in the family grew to despise him deeply. Since he was not their only son, they immediately planned to have his younger brother inherit the title. As for him, the count's wife had him sent into the Commandery Princess's manor in a small sedan chair to serve Commandery Princess Saiking. He had mobility issues and a terrible temper. The Commandery Princess's manor was never short of attendants, and he was soon cast aside. After that, I never heard of him again. In the bedchamber, I was leaning against the Emperor's lap, squinting my eyes as I enjoyed the lychees he peeled for me. The lychee flesh was translucent and refreshingly sweet. A few days ago, the imperial physician diagnosed that his health had fully recovered, and the Grand Astrologer also said that in the future, he no longer needed to observe those restrictions. So, he put our wedding on the agenda.
The last coronation as consort wronged you.
This time, we must have a grand celebration, so that everyone knows you are my empress. The emperor was so excited he could not sleep, wishing he could personally review every single detail of the grand wedding.
Chixue, I will definitely make you the happiest woman.
When the wedding day arrived, everything was so meticulous that it shocked and moved me. 10 miles of red bridal procession and 10,000 glowing lanterns, the phoenix crown and ceremonial robe. Every single stitch and thread had been embroidered by the seamstresses over 3 whole months. The emperor held my hand, and under the watchful eyes of the officials and noble ladies, we slowly walked up into the golden palace.
Chixue, I have a fondness for you. From the very first time I saw you crying while gnawing on a pork shank, looking so aggrieved yet so stubborn, we had already lost our heart to you. For the rest of our days, through every morning and evening, we shall accompany you to feast on all the delicacies under heaven, protect you, and keep you safe and secure for a lifetime, never letting you suffer even a shred of grievance again.
I squeezed his hand tightly and pressed it against my still flat lower abdomen. My imperial child and I feel the same way. From now on, our family of 3 will, year after year, always be this complete, blissful, and happy. Just as the words left my mouth, amidst the emperor's pleasantly surprised gaze, fireworks erupted across the horizon. The fireworks bloomed one after another, lighting up the entire night sky. The chubby girl who was once ridiculed had now become the empress, treasured in the palm of the emperor's hand, eating to my heart's content, loving to absolute fulfillment, a life of security, free of worries year after year.